What's the hardest choice you've ever had in a video game? Is it playing that airport level in Call of Duty? Or is it going through and deciding if you're going to lose a companion to save a village? Or is it wearing that really hideous armor because it has godlike stats? Well, depending on the game, it might be any of those. So let's talk today about what empathy is and why those choices might be harder in video games than some people really realize. Welcome back to Ridir Gaming. I'm Wes, and if you haven't been here before, here at Ridir Gaming, we do talking head bits once a month where it's a video essay about something related to the gaming industry or video games or how we can use video games to make other things better. So today we're going to talk about empathy in video games and if we can use video games to kind of teach empathy or really if it's kind of nonsense. And this is something that I like to do because I'm a dad and I like using video games to relax, and I also like using video games to hang out with my kids, but I also want to use whatever I can to make them better than I am. And I get it. Video games aren't everybody's cup of coffee, tea, or G Fuel. So sometimes we have to convince spouses or other people that, hey, this is a really good idea to actually do this. Let's use a different mode, different medium, so that we can actually go through and reach our kids and connect with them and maybe get our message through to them. If you have any questions, suggestions, or anything like that, you can always hit us up in the comments down below, but there's always Twitter, there's Instagram, there's Twitch, always talking about how we can make the community better than the day prior. Now, with that, let's get started. What is empathy and is it contagious? According to Merriam-Webster, empathy is the action of understanding, being aware of, being sensitive to, or vicariously experiencing the feelings, thoughts, and experiences of another, either the past or present, without actually having the feelings, thoughts, and experience fully communicated in an objectively explicit manner or the capacity to do this. Please don't get sympathy confused. It's similar but more akin to sharing the feelings, while empathy is imagining the feelings. Having empathy doesn't mean we will want to help someone in need, but it can be a necessary first step towards a compassionate action. And according to Great Good magazine from Berkeley University, empathy reduces bullying, can help improve relationships through understanding others' emotions, reduces prejudice and racism, can make work more bearable, and can make communities more altruistic. Who doesn't want to be able to go into an online lobby and not have to listen to some 12-year-old yelling because there's a chick who can probably kick their ass in the game and they're not able to understand what their actions are doing? There are two main ways we can look at video games influencing our understanding of empathy. First, through the game itself. Do we have an emotional attachment to the characters? Can we feel their loss? Can we imagine what they're suffering, how their choices, actions, and decisions must weigh on their conscience? The second way is as a tool, playing alongside someone else, talking through decisions and how it affects others. Let's begin with the weight of the world. And there's a ton of games to start with. We could start with 2018's God of War. We could start with a million different games, but let's start with one of my favorite studios, Respawn. Under the direction of Chad, Stig, and Peter, the studio revived the Medal of Honor series, published the cult classic Titanfall 2, and recently published both Jedi Fallen Order and Apex Legends. If you want to know more about Respawn, look at how they handled interlacing very realistic stories within Medal of Honor with documentary footage of veterans retelling those stories and revisiting sites, often heavy with emotion. Titanfall 2's subreddit is constantly talking about the emotional impact of the relationship between BT and the player's pilot, one that is tied to the players themselves. In Jedi Fallen Order, the entire introduction or tutorial planet and cutscenes lay out a dark and oppressive environment, but not without some hope. Throughout both Titanfall 2 and Fallen Order are cutscenes not to advance the game to the next level, but to build the environment, to give the protagonist a reason to continue, and for the player to care. Arguably in both games, the pilot and Jedi could run away and hide from their conflicts instead of going to great lengths to help others and provide security and assistance to those that could not secure it themselves. The single common thread amongst these games has been that they tell a powerful and convincing story that resonates with their audience. This isn't as simple as having a short cutscene and moving on to the next level. No, Titanfall 2 had wonderful voice acting, great digital artists mold a new galaxy to shape, the scenes and the music were breathtaking, and the players could hear the choices weighing heavily in the actor's speech. In Jedi Fallen Order, the actors were more than just voice actors. They played their part, they were motion captured and gave life to a story, telling the ups, the downs, the satisfaction and guilt that characters live with, and expressing the emotion so powerfully that it pulls the player into the story. But having players identify with heroes isn't anything new. Halo, Gears of War, Mass Effect, The Witcher, A Plague's Tale, Innocence, and countless other games have managed to wrap their players in empathy for humanity, the galaxy, or simply just the village population facing a brutal and terrifying monster. These games are powerful because they elicit empathy in the players and have great game mechanics. All of these games have at least one thing in common. They are terrific at telling a story and they're holding their players' attention. A counter argument that many would say are that video games have no bearing on the real world and use Mass Effect and the inherent Paragon and Renegade dynamic. They claim that video games can't be used to help increase or decrease morality or empathy circles, and the players don't really have a choice. And specifically in Mass Effect 1 and 2, there were changes in Mass Effect 3, because the outcome was always the same. Renegade choices, whether you killed 3,000 people to accomplish this or you saved 3,000 people to accomplish, you always finished the mission. You always beat the bad guys. You always won. There really was no difference to the galaxy at large if players were good or evil. They still saved it. Recently, Mass Effect developer John Ebeneger divulged that 92% of players were Paragon in Mass Effect. Admittedly, this doesn't show that video games increase empathy, but it may show that gamers aren't incapable of empathy. They certainly demonstrated in spades for the citizens of Mass Effect's Milky Way galaxy. How can we use this to our advantage as a society? In my humble opinion, we use excellent storytellers, be they authors, graphic novelists, game writers, or writers in the funny section of the newspaper, and they bring out history, humanity, plight, heroism, and highlight them in wonderfully designed games. Are we facing a crisis on Earth that we've never seen before? Maybe the planet is getting warmer and warmer and warmer, and in order to save it requires teams of individuals to scour the globe for technology that can reduce the impact of various negative influences, but that doesn't make a good game. That makes a political message. The empathy required to make it impactful would be similar to Medal of Honor, visiting various countries and seeing the impact that the rising tides have. The flooding of Miami and Los Angeles in the United States, the loss of major trading harbors in China, and nearly immediate stop of trade to Europe and Africa, and how the people suffer without resources necessary to continue improving their cities, counter the intense heat and the crop failures, and making it visual. Because empathy isn't about the faceless masses. Empathy is about the individual face, being able to put a face to suffering. And video games do this more often than not. You can see people suffering in video games, but not everyone walks away from video games receiving an emotional message or feeling the agency within a character's desire. Some just play it for the challenge and the mechanics and move on, not paying attention to the campaign. This would prevent nearly all recognition of the impact design in the story. Well, there's another method, but this one requires a much more hands-on method from parents, teachers, and mentors. Individuals love their own unique flavors of their favorite subjects, right? Some readers love Little Women, while others look forward to the next Spider-Man graphic novel. A group of film enthusiasts might fawn over Transformers, while the critics love Parasite. The same is true for video games and learning. Teaching and learning, regardless of the subject, require extraordinary levels of patience, understanding, and care. Figuring out what can help someone develop additional understanding is difficult, but in some cases, such as the studies behind Crystals of Khador, it becomes clear that for some students attempting to learn empathy, they were able to understand and respond appropriately to the facial cues in the game. And to top it all off, it wasn't a boring look at this TV and tell me what you're feeling or tell me what they're feeling type study. Instead, the middle school students were able to play a game to rescue their stranded robot and have fun. The facial cues were integrated to interactions with the alien race to attempt to find resources to send a message back to Earth. Not all students showed success with the game, but some did. And Crystals of Khador is the most overt and direct method of trying to use a game to teach empathy and kindness. Other games, through naturally good storytelling, put teachable moments into their games. The hero must move through a particularly hard sequence and face tough decisions. Others make sacrifices or endure losses that are wrought with emotion, such as Marcus and Dom's final battle together in Gears of War 3. Taking time after particularly tough moments in the game to explain why we choose what we do, to talk about how we make decisions and how they affect other people with our kids can help shape better people and gamers in the future. Being able to raise good kids and make a community a better place isn't about being the most morally upright and shining star within the neighborhood. No, sometimes it can just simply be avoiding being, or letting others be, a troll. The correct term is schadenfreude or epikakarite, I cannot say that, which is a feeling of glee at someone else's misery or misfortune. And for many of us, that feeling comes when that person is like just mean to us all the time for no reason, or behaves like they're better than us, and they get their just rewards of having a parking ticket or stuck in traffic or spilling their coffee before they can enjoy it. But for others, maybe the 8% of players who played Renegade just because they could, or those few players in Call of Duty's lobbies that just make it miserable for all the other gamers there, it is the intense pleasure of others' misfortune, discomfort, or failure. And here's where I completely agree with Julie Muncy, who wrote, "Games can't make you better, that's your job." and she wrote this in Stop Expecting Games to Build Empathy. And what Julie wrote in that article is really interesting, and it takes the Crystals of Kador and says this game can't do it by itself. This game isn't going to make you a better person. No game can make you a better person. It requires you to put in effort, or it requires somebody else to coach you to put in effort. But let's move forward with games and learning as a tool. If games can't make us better on our own, then why not use them as a tool? They can almost certainly help us, but not without some challenges. The first one is, why don't we just design games simply to teach empathy, or math, language arts, or history? Well, to be honest, most people that are good at teaching are probably terrible at producing games. Out of the dozens of teachers and instructors I've had and continue to work with, there are very few have been what I would consider entertaining. Most have been drab, boring, and not that interesting. Finding a teacher that is good at getting people to learn is either a savant or extremely tired at the end of the day, and I don't think they're going to go design a game after that. Additionally, game writers and developers have challenging tasks in front of them already, and to actively ensure they are building a game to teach and develop particular skills must be addressed at the beginning stages and built into the foundation of the game. However, getting these two groups to sit down and brainstorm isn't outside the box. In fact, that's what several universities are doing in their research, including the University of Wisconsin. Getting really smart individuals sitting down in a focus group to say, hey, we already use examples from Assassin's Creed to show the architectural design differences in different eras. This is fantastic. Can we apply this to this other area of history? That'd be one thing. A collaboration between developers, writers, and educators could make something simply stunning. Empathy, sympathy, and moral courage can all be included in its teachable moments because these are not skills that are inherent to a person since birth, but modeled, shaped, and guided by the most influential people in children's lives. The second challenge is bias against video games and screen time. I know that my kids are enthralled by the magical light boxes in the house, phones, tablets, TVs, computers, even my Garmin watch, and I have no idea why. It can make them absolutely crazy and zombies at the same time. If my kids could do something else and show that they don't stop cold in their tracks every time a device is on, I'm sure my wife would be much more supportive of using games as an educational tool. There's a bias with video games specifically because they might cause more harm than good. And as with any tool, it depends on how it's used by the craftsman. A hammer is great for nails, but a truly masterful furniture set for your house isn't going to be only made with nails and a hammer. A wonderfully educated person doesn't rely on a single method of instruction and learning either. Convincing politicians to use games, and more specifically gamification, to educate and help foster a better generation is everyone's responsibility. I don't know what everyone thinks of Common Core, but the original idea was to give every educator 6 ways to teach any subject and use them as needed. Think of parents with 6 different ways to help reduce bullying, to help show compassion, and to get some much needed conversation time with their children. Video games can be that bridge if we can just get out of our own way. At the end of the day, video games won't replace our responsibility as parents, mentors, and teachers for the next generations, but if we use them correctly as tools, they can significantly help us. I plan to use everything I can to make my boys better than I am, to ensure that they care for one another, their family, their friends, their neighborhood. If you're looking for a mature game that can go through and give you some really tough decisions, I suggest The Witcher 3. There are many instances where there's no right choice available, and this is great teaching points and great talking points to be able to go through and say, hey, I know that this is a tough choice. They both have positives and negatives, so let's discuss how to approach this subject. This has been Wes from Ridir Gaming. Thank you for listening to my video essay on empathy. This is the first in a series I'm calling Moral Combat, where we're trying to use video games to make society better. So if you're interested in that, please subscribe and leave a comment below letting me know what you want to discuss in the future, or if you have a counter argument against this. That's the only way we can grow, is for us to have a discussion with the argument and the counter argument to figure out what's in the middle. Once again, I am available at Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, Facebook, just about any social media except for TikTok, because I don't know how to TikTok. This was a lot of fun, so please grab those controllers, game on. This has been Wes from Ridir Gaming, and we'll see you next time.